In the United States, people with disabilities constitute our nation's largest minority group. According to the American Library Association's Library Services for People with Disabilities policy, quote, library collections should include materials with accurate and up-to-date information on the spectrum of disabilities, disability issues, and services for people with disabilities, their families, and other concerned persons, end quote. This video features authors who weave their experiences with addiction, mental illness, and/or disability into the prose and poetry they craft. Librarians are uniquely placed to help direct patrons to information, services, and materials that aid in stigma reduction, rehabilitation, and recovery. Libraries offer a safe haven and an access point to valuable services that may not be available anywhere else.
I like to share the possibility that people can really become involved with their world, and I think that all of us can make a difference. And one of my biggest inspirations is simply the fact that I've been through transformative experiences in my life, being on the Olympic team, recovering from mental illness, earning a master's degree, being homeless, 3 career changes, being married and divorced, making a lot of friends. This is actually a line from one of my poems. And all those experiences have made me who I am, and I've affected those experiences myself as they've happened. And that's what inspires me, is the fact that those experiences can change other people as well.
Well, I want to pass on knowledge that's going to be helpful to people. I get really happy when I have a mother say to me, well, your book enabled my kid to get a job or to go to college, or you helped me, teach my little kid language. Or a rancher comes up to me and says, well, I built one of your corrals and it really worked. Or downloaded stuff off your webpage on cattle flight zone and point of balance, and that really worked when I handled my cattle. I like going and putting knowledge out there that can help people in the practical world, help people with autism, help people with livestock.
I like to tell a librarian about my books is my books are very harmless, they're very happy, they're not very mean, they're very kind and nice, just like me. They're real positive books, my books are. They're not full anything dumb, full of positive images.
We got to realize this is an illness. If we saw a person on the street, had a compound fracture, was laying on the street with a bone sticking out of their leg, we'd want to help them. We don't feel that way about persons with mental illness. We're afraid of them. We want to avoid them. But we also underneath want to blame them. Because to realize that this is an illness means it can happen to you. And we don't believe it can happen to us. We don't believe it. You don't think you're going to wake up tomorrow and have a mental illness. You just don't. But what I'm here to tell you is, you could wake up tomorrow and get a telephone call and find out that your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter does have one. Because that's what happened to me. And then when that happens, then all of a sudden you'll get it. You'll understand that these are illnesses. So that's the first thing that we have to do.
There's still a stigma about addictions, whether it be alcoholism or drug abuse, and there is a stigma about this. And I think the only way we're going to combat this is to help people, is to give people knowledge, so that they're not so afraid of it or don't want anything to do with it.
Because of the stigma associated with addiction, many people are afraid to seek out help and are even afraid to go to a bookstore and buy a book about sobriety or about recovery and carry it around, or have it in their purse, or maybe their spouse would find it, or somebody at work would see them reading it, and they're not at a point yet where they're ready to admit that to others. They may only just be beginning to admit that to themselves. And the idea that that person could go and stand in the library with that book in their hand in a quiet, secluded corner of a library and read that book or read a portion of that book anonymously, completely anonymously, and even, even if they were to check it out, then still somewhat anonymously be able to have access to that information. Along with that, what we know about people whose addiction has progressed, who are in active addiction and are really struggling with that, is that they tend to have financial consequences as a result of their addiction. So the idea that those materials might be available in a library and they're both free and anonymous is a huge thing.
My name is Jackie Andrasky, and I've written a book called Dudley. And this is a children's book for children from 5 to 12, and it was illustrated by Renee Nilgis. And Dudley, right here, has actually lived in our home since my daughter was about 8 years old.
Well, my name's Temple Brandon. I'm a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. And back in 1949, when I was a little 2.5-year-old kid, I had all the symptoms of autism. And I was very lucky to get into a very good early educational intervention program.
There's a whole lot to what I do, and everything right now is intertwined. I ride everywhere on my bicycle, and I am really active in the mental health consumer movement, trying to make a difference for people with mental illnesses by sharing my own recovery. And my writing is about that and how to help people connect to and impact their world. And I combine spoken word poetry and motivational speaking, and I do performances, and I also do artwork called digital poem collages, which is visual art combining photography and collage and poetry.
I mean, here I am. I said to my wife, Patty, one night, I said, look, I want to help our son, but I don't know what to do. And she looked at me and she said, well, Pete Early, a father, can't find out much. But Pete Early, a reporter, can investigate this and find out what's going on in mental health today? Why couldn't you get our son help, and why now is he charged with 2 felonies and being threatened with being put in jail?
My name is Jamie Graham. I was born in South Bend, Indiana in 1956. I was born with a disability which was hard of hearing.
Well, my name is Kelly Madigan Erlinson, and I am a person in long-term recovery. And what that means in my case is that I have not had a drink in over 28 years. I am also an author who is writing in multiple genres. I write poetry, essays. I'm currently working on a novel, and I've published a self-help how-to book that aims to help people get started in recovery from substance abuse.
My first book was Uncle Jamie's The Helmet Show. It was about, my adopted niece, Laura Haley. I went into her house and she saw me wearing my helmet and she was scared. You lost your hat, Uncle Jamie. Well, at that time she was 3 years. Well, I don't know if she was maybe she was 3 or 4 years old. But back then she thought I lost my head, and that inspired me to make my first book, Uncle Jamie, The Helmet Show. And you know about people with disabilities, all wear helmets, but my book is real neat book. It got all kinds of different helmets, and that's why it's called The Helmet Show. I show up my different helmets. I got a bear helmet, I got a tree helmet, I got a rock helmet, I got a cloud helmet, I got a monster helmet, I got a bat helmet, I got a wheel helmet, and my wheel helmet is a wheel. And I really do like, I really do like to feel, I like to peel out with my wheel helmet.
I remember as a poet that I didn't understand that I was a poet. I knew that I was writing even in grade school and certainly in early junior high, and I had this compulsion to write and capture images. But I really didn't understand what I was doing, and I have such a clear memory of standing in my junior high library, and I had discovered a collection, an anthology of modern poets. And I'd opened it up and was standing there basically devouring these poems. As I was standing, I couldn't even walk away with the book. I was just struck.
My first writing was writing for our state farm magazine in Arizona back in the early 70s. I was a livestock editor, and I wrote articles about cattle industry, cattle handling. I'd do features on ranches and dairies and feedlots. That was some of my earliest writing professionally, was for livestock. In fact, my very first book was Livestock Handling and Transport in 1993. I edited a book with multiple authors on the state-of-the-art literature reviews on cattle, sheep, and pig handling. I have to write, language describes the picture I have in my mind. Thinking in pictures is all of my writing. Animals in Translation, Animals Make Us Human. I had Katherine Johnson, my brilliant co-author. See, I don't know how to write in a kind of, storytelling style like she does it. You read Thinking in Pictures, or you read things on Grandin.com, my webpage, that's all my writing. That's technical writing. Livestock handling and transport, I've got chapters in there that are all my writing. I'm a good technical writer. Just explaining, like writing down directions on how to handle cattle with the flight zone point of balance, just explaining how to do it in a clear way.
I have a poem, it's called Your Only Flavor is Vanilla If You Don't Have a Mental Illness. And I've asked a lot of my friends, and I said, if you could wave a magic wand and make your illness go away, would you do it? And some of my friends say, yeah, I'd make it all go away. But my experiences with mental illness have made me the person I am today. It's like I've walked through the fire and been forged into a stronger, different person. And I would say mental illness is a benefit to me because it's made me stronger. I've been through the depths of the valley and found that if I were to fear evil, it would be my own self that I fear. And I've found people that helped me get out of the valley of evil when I had no hope. And I found that I could reach out and find other people. And that's helped me in a way that's a real benefit to me because the ability to network and build a community of people around me to support and to share has helped me build a community of people in my bicycle pedestrian work and in my poetry work. And learning to build one community helped me build a community in my church. And I'm now a member of so many communities because of the mental illness community.
I really didn't see myself as a writer of a self-help book. I felt like there's a lot of self-help books already on the market, and I like to think of myself as a more literary writer. And so I was like, well, I could do that, but I don't really want to. That's really not something that's on my agenda. But one of the things about being in recovery is that I get to learn that my agenda isn't always first, and that sometimes there's another agenda at play. And so eventually I came to understand that I was supposed to write this book, that I was uniquely qualified in the sense that I had, experienced addiction myself, was in long-term recovery, and also as a counselor had spent 25 years perfecting or attempting to perfect how to best talk to somebody in early recovery about these very issues.
Well, I thought I knew a lot about mental illness. As a reporter, I'd covered deinstitutionalization, the closing of the state hospitals, and I thought I was pretty, smart about these things. And then my own son got sick, and I found out I didn't know anything, and I was completely lost. My son was in college. A lot of folks are struck with severe mental illnesses when they're at the ages 20 to 27. And his brother called me up one day. He lived in New York with my son, who was attending a school there. And he said, "Dad, Mike's crazy." And I raced to New York to get him. And I'll never forget that car ride, a 4-hour ride from New York to Fairfax County, Virginia, where I live. Mike would laugh one minute, and he'd begin sobbing the next. And he said to me, "Dad, how would you feel if someone you loved killed himself?" And I knew that he had been having problems. He had seen a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist had put him on medication. And we thought everything was fine. And then he stopped taking his pills, and he became this psychotic person. I pleaded with him to take his medication, and he screamed, "Pills are poison, leave me alone." And so we drove to an emergency room. I didn't know where else to go, and I rushed him in. And I thought we'd get help there. And I'll never forget, the nurse rolled her eyes while Mike talked gibberish about how God had him on this special mission. And then we were taken to a waiting room, which is what we did for 4 hours. Finally, a doctor came in. He put up his hands as if he was surrendering, and he said, "I'm sorry, I can't help your son." I said, "You haven't even examined my son." He said, "It doesn't matter." The nurse had told him that my son thought all pills were poison, and he knew he had a mental health diagnosis. And we'd been waiting for 4 hours, and no one had heard of each other. And the law was very specific. Unless you're in imminent danger, either to yourself or someone else, you can't be required to undergo treatment. And so the doctor literally turned to me and he said, "Bring your son back after he tries to kill you or he tries to kill someone else." And my son walked out the door.
In my book, Getting Sober, I recommend that people get a library card because I believe that libraries are a really safe place for people in early recovery who might be having difficulty managing cravings or having temptations to drink or to use drugs. And so we know that we live in a drinking culture and alcohol is widely available, and people who are not struggling with addiction may not realize that there's not a lot of places where you can go where alcohol is not in view. I mean, even if you go get gas in your car or you're going to buy groceries, you're being confronted with, displays of alcohol and big alcohol advertisements and, different end caps with, the chilled down version of whatever your favorite thing used to be. So going to the grocery store becomes treacherous for people in very early recovery. And many excursions become treacherous. So the idea that I can go to a library, which has that sort of calm setting. It's not going to be a place where I'm going to be overstimulated or have to deal with a lot of noise or interaction. And I know I can trust that it's a safe place in terms of being alcohol free.
And also, I know that a lot of librarians have little reading groups with small children, and they read different books to kids. And if they would incorporate some of these readings from people in recovery and then to get some discussion going, I think that would be another way. Teachers are always asking the librarians for book lists for examples of books that they want them for summer reading. And hopefully, if the librarians would suggest some of these books, that would be another way to get more children reading.
You have to find your niche in starting with your own community. Oftentimes, libraries are a great place for that. They either will be hosting writing workshops, they might be bringing visiting writers in, and you could go and hear them speak, and you could then, afterwards strike up a conversation with them, ask them some questions, but really looking around in your own community for other writers and other people that might be interested in, hosting a poetry reading or something like that. So we're just building that community or tapping into community that's already there.
People don't understand that people with disabilities are the #2 minority in the United States. There's more people with disabilities than there are African Americans. And of all the disabilities, people with psychiatric disabilities are generally the most poor, the most underemployed, and often seem to have less access to societal resources than other groups. Yet, from that worldview, from that set of challenges, people can come up with incredible perspectives, incredible art and stories and websites, and people with mental illnesses have really found a way to build new lives rather than trying to get back to the lives we used to have. And those stories, those works, would love to see some form of publication or display. And one of the most important benefits of sharing that kind of work would be to help people who have struggles but can't admit them because of fear, people who feel a strong sense of discrimination and prejudice towards mental illness, people that are afraid to identify as having a mental illness if they see successful people identified with an illness that think their illness is an asset. It'll be a real benefit to society.
Early in my writing career, before I had opportunities to go away places like writing residencies, the library was really a haven for me. Not only for the reasons I mentioned earlier, that it was a safe place in terms of being alcohol-free and not having to deal with any temptations or cravings in early recovery there, but also that it just afforded a secluded place to go and focus on writing, to be able to sit at a table and write, and to not only not be interrupted, but to somehow know that that process was honored. It's obviously honored if you are surrounded by books, you are surrounded by people who love books, who read, who who are interested in writing and in reading and in literature and in all the ways that libraries can impact people's lives.